We brought out different parts of our own giftings and things that we called out on each other. And in sharing and being vulnerable in different areas of our life really allowed us to do that.
Welcome to Permission Slips, a space for you to practice paying attention to your life with kindness and self-compassion so you can discover the wholeness, purpose, and joy you were made for. I'm Jillian DeBritz, a life and leadership coach and a recovering perfectionist, learning alongside you how to give myself permission to be human. I am thrilled to have one of my very best friends in the whole wide world with me today for a conversation about friendship and the journey that we have been on together for the last 15 years. So Kandice Halferty, welcome. Thank you for being here, friend.
Well, thanks for having me. I feel so honored.
It's really, really fun, especially because we're not in the same town anymore. Rarely get to see each other in person, although I love that we're recording this almost exactly a week after your birthday. So we got to see each other last week in real life,
yeah,
which was so great.
Fun.
But to have a conversation about the ways that our friendship has shaped us both. And again, I shared with you before we started recording that my hope really is to help people imagine where they might be able to cultivate deeper, more meaningful, more supportive friendships in their own life. Because as we were talking about before, I didn't know what was possible until I met you. And so I just want people to know, I know, well, you kind of set a high bar for what a friend could and should be, truly. And so I've learned a ton just from being in relationship with you for, the last decade and a half. What in the world?
I know.
It's crazy.
I know. Through babies and everything.
I know, through babies before, I guess we met literally right after Zoe, your daughter, was born.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So
yeah,
wild.
Before I had kids. So that's a funny story. We'll come back to that, but I want people to know who you are, Kandice, and maybe I'll let you introduce yourself. But first I'll say who you are to me. Okay. Kandice, again, I said, is one of my very best friends. And we met 15 years ago when Corey and I moved for Corey's job into a new town, to Allensburg, where Kandice had been born and raised, and became fast friends. And one of the things I really love about Kandice is her intentionality, her relentless pursuit of depth and meaning and authenticity in relationships. And I said it sort of jokingly, but also completely honestly, that you have changed my perspective on what friendship can and should be. So will you tell people, just talk about yourself, where you are, what you're doing, what your life looks like these days?
Yeah, I have our oldest is learning how to drive. It's kind of crazy.
What?
I know. She's 15, going on 16, as the song goes. And our son, Soren, is 12. So busy with taking them, doing all the things, chauffeur or Uber driver.
Yeah, totally.
for the kids.
Yeah.
And then my husband and I moved to Tacoma 8 years ago to plant a church in Tacoma. And so that takes up a lot of our time and energy, and we love it. At the same time, it can be a lot, but we love it. We love it. And currently I'm going back to school to get my master's in counseling. And that has been a stretch and a joy at the same time. So while my kids are at school, I'm trying to get my homework done. That's kind of what my days look like.
Crazy.
And then I also work very part-time at our church with our residency program and our anchor school is what we call it, of discipleship and ministry. And that has been also so much fun. I get to work with young adults and see them from start to finish improve and grow. And gosh, it really is such a cool experience to walk with them in their spiritual formation as they learn how to be leaders and even learn the soft skills that we take for granted or don't even know how to do, like being on time or how self-care, this little stuff that we're oh yeah, as adult we should look at that. So yeah, life is full, but there's so much good.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like you were underselling the significance of what you do at Anchor, the church that you and Brian planted, like you said, 8 years ago. But your role there is so much more foundational than I think anyone really can see, because there's so much that you're supporting and undergirding of what Brian has been able to do as a leader. And so it's sort of the unofficial role, the support and the not even just support. And I don't want to, again, undervalue the role of wives. And especially in the season when you moved, you were a stay-at-home mom, supporting him and enabling him to go and spend so many hours planting a church and meeting with people while you were caring for the kiddos. So that's important. And I don't want to undervalue that. But there was so much more, and there has been so much more that you've done to shape the culture and the direction of Anchor than anyone would know and than any official title would reveal. And then on top of that, now to be sort of designing this discipleship school. You mentioned young adults taking Anchor school classes, but I'm raising my hand as someone who wants to take these classes because you're offering them online also now, right? Talk a little bit more about what Anchor School is.
Yes. Anchor School holds such a special place in my heart. I love it so much. That's actually where I first got to start going back to school. It really was originally made for our internship program who got to take credits for these classes. We started with spiritual formation, and I got to be the person that asked who's in charge of the school, Pastor Susan, if I could be the first student that wasn't an intern to be a part of the school. And so I feel like it holds a special place in my heart because that's really where I got started going back to school. And it was such a great way to start because it was still very intimidating. I had no idea if I could write a paper. Like, how do you do this? Like, what are the qualifications? Like, having not been back to school for 20 years. And I feel like, Susan with her kindness and just the group of people, it just was such a good, easy step to going back to school. So that's what really led me to find my master's in counseling is really through Anchor School. So that's why it holds a special spot.
I don't know that I knew that part of the story, Kandice, that you were the first non-intern to take classes, which then expanded the vision of Anchor School to be really an opportunity for people of all ages, right? To be able to take these kind of discipleship, spiritual formation classes to grow in their faith and in their own personal development spiritually. And you were mentioning Pastor Susan. So Susan is my spiritual director who I interviewed earlier in the podcast. I'll have to make sure to link our conversation there. But so she's who you work with, just sort of in the part-time work that you do with Anchor School. But I love that of course you were the first person to ask, can I learn? Can I join this? Like, I want to grow. I want to be a part of this. I want to expand my knowledge and I see this. Can I be a part of that? Because that's who you are. You've always been such a learner, always been so hungry to grow, to learn, to acquire more knowledge, and not just head knowledge, but like experiential knowledge. And so I love that now you and I get to be a part of a program that Anchor School is piloting starting in November called the Spiritual Formation Cohort. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I'm really excited. Yeah, the minute that I get to work with Susan, and she's an amazing human being. And the minute that she started mentioning doing a spiritual formation cohort, I was like, sign me up. I'm already on board.
Same.
Yeah. So it's going to be so great. We get to meet. It's going to be over the course of 18 months, and we're going to have 4 different retreats broken up, one in the fall and one in the spring over the course of basically 2 years. And it's going to be so good. It's going to be so rich. We're going to learn how to be in triads, how to do listening prayer, listening to each other, listening for each other, growing in our spiritual formation, growing in our understanding of what actually is spiritual formation and like with the history of spiritual formation. There's so much that we're going to uncover in that time, and it's going to be really great. There's going to be 20 of us, and you and I are going to be a part of that 20.
I can't wait. I cannot wait. So we weren't planning on talking about this, but I will be sure to link the registration page and the info in the show notes in case anyone listening is like, I live in the Northwest. You and I are in different towns. It's, anyone that can travel to the Portland area, right, could sign up for this if they want to be a part of it. But I just think about how if people are wondering about spiritual direction, spiritual formation, they can definitely listen to that episode with Susan. But I think about how my faith has deepened so much more than I can even put words to through my experience with spiritual direction, where the things I know to be true about God and about the Bible have moved from my head to my heart and into my hands. And so it truly has shaped me and grounded me more than anything else in my spiritual life. And so Yeah, I love that we get to do this together in real life.
Yeah.
But let's go back. Enough of thank you for giving us the intro to who you are and what you're doing with your days. But can you talk about how, if you remember, how we became friends in the first place, just as people are thinking about people in their own lives that they might not expect to be the people that they get to walk with over time. I want to remember what the journey looked like for you and I and our friend Stephanie, who isn't with us today, but is such a critical part of the triad that we have together. Will you talk about our friendship and how it started?
Gosh, well, I think our husbands were friends first. Corey and Brian were friends first.
That's right.
And the fun story is that I was in labor with our daughter Zoe, and and my husband Brian was going to meet your husband, and he said, "Hey, just meet me at the hospital. We can get a quick coffee. I heard these labor things, they last a long time." And I think you were the one who was like, "Corey, no, you cannot go meet him while his wife is in labor."
That was actually Corey. That was Corey, because I remember it was the very first day that Corey showed up for work in Ellensburg. So I will always remember Zoe's birthday, and I will always remember how long we've been in Ellensburg, because I hadn't even moved yet. Corey was here by himself and was about or maybe it was right after we'd moved. Like I was not settled in at all. Didn't even know where we were, what way was up. And he went into the office for his very first day, and Brian was one of his appointments. He's like, "Yeah, just come to the hospital." And Corey's like, no, we can reschedule. But that's Brian trying to maximize his time and connections with people.
Yes.
That's right. I forgot our guys knew each other in college. Okay, so then how did you and I become friends?
Yeah, I mean, I think we met as a couple when Zoe was a baby, probably not too old, but I remember it was during the summer fair time, Young Life booth. Potatoes, I think, was the thing at that point.
Oh, it was
and
awful.
we were there walking around with our new little girl. And I remember I saw you and I was like, "Oh my gosh, hey, Jillian, we need to get a walk." And I remember you like squatted down, you looked me in the eyes, and you were so intentional. And you're like, "Yes, I would love that. Let's make that happen." And I remember like, I was like sold. It's like, we're going to be fast long friends. That intentionality of holding that space with me from that minute on has not changed. So you are still that person who holds space for me and for other people too.
It's so interesting that that's what you remember, because I actually don't remember that moment. What I remember, well, I can imagine that moment. I squatted down because I was in a trailer, like above the ground, trying to serve baked potatoes to raise money at the fair. And so we were up high. And so I was trying to like get to your level and make eye contact. But what I remember was that we had moved to Ellensburg in the midst of the deepest depression I had ever experienced. I felt like I didn't know how to be around people anymore. I was overcome with social anxiety. Didn't know how to have conversations anymore. My brain felt like it had shut down. I felt like I had no personality. I didn't want people to know me in this state, because I felt like I had nothing to offer. I didn't want to be known, and also I didn't feel like I knew how to get to know people. And moving is hard enough as it is for anyone who's new, and you've been there to do the work. Yeah, it feels like dating, right? To kind of sniff out like, who are the people that are going to be worth the time and energy or are willing to spend time together. And what I remember is you pursuing me over and over and over, inviting me on walks. And we conveniently lived really close to each other. So we'd meet in the middle. Gosh, I miss those days.
I know. The kids would be in the stroller and they'd be quiet, give them snacks, and we could just talk and walk. It's great.
Oh my gosh. Do you remember when our girls, I don't remember how old they were. I think we had the double bobs at that point. So we would have both kids in both of our strollers, 4 between the two of us, all about the same age. And the girls would want to be on the inside where they could reach their hands out to hold each other's hands across the stroller.
There was even like a little strap that they would hold on. And we were like, "Okay, girls, we're crashing into each other."
I know. Oh my gosh. But I remember even before that point, like when we were first getting to know each other, you would text and ask to go for a walk, and I'd be like, "Okay, if she wants to. I feel like Eeyore. I don't feel like I have anything to talk about. I hate who I am right now, but if you want to hang out with me, that's on you." But being surprised. I remember feeling surprised every time you invited me, and then you would invite me again. And again, I look back at the through line of our friendship and between you and I and Stephanie together. And it has consistently been Kandice initiating, reaching out, putting yourself out there, inviting, saying, hey, we should hang out. Hey, we should do this. Hey, we should do this, which I recognize takes so much work, so much effort, and so much courage to be the one to initiate. And so I guess publicly for the world to hear, I want to say thank you for pursuing me and for not giving up on a girl who was really hard to, I was really hard to get to know in those days. I didn't want to be known, and you chased after me anyway. So thank you.
Yeah, I did not see that at all. So yeah, I don't think you were necessarily hiding it, but I think I was just drawn to you and who you were as a person and what questions you asked and how you saw me. It was just so easy on my part. Yeah, it was not hard.
Well, and then this is another funny memory I have of us. We just talked about, but because the boys were friends, we invited you guys over for dinner or lunch or something. I can't remember. And I was so proud of myself because, again, in this season, hosting, cooking, like everything just felt really, really hard. And so I was like, all right, I'll just make like a pot of taco soup, like chicken taco soup. And it's easy. Like we'll be low stress. We don't have to be fancy. And you guys came to our house and I didn't know you were a vegetarian. And you were so kind. I just remember thinking, oh, gosh, I didn't even think to ask. And yeah, for us to be able to laugh about it and for you to not say, I don't want to be friends with this girl. She's such a dork. She doesn't even think about her guests' preferences or, restrictions. But for you to still want to hang out with me, I feel like you knew me at my very worst and still wanted me. And I'll never get over that.
Isn't it funny the things we think in our head? Like I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm such an inconvenience because I don't eat certain foods, or like how annoying that must be. And you're like thinking like, oh, I can do something easy. I'm putting forth all this effort, and then being like, oh my gosh, I didn't even ask the question. Like how much we can be in our head, but until we say it out loud. And I feel like with our friendship and with including Stephanie, I feel like we've learned over the years how to say those things out loud or give each other like permission that we don't have to give in to those thoughts, and we can talk through it and we can say the things we're thinking in such a real way.
Yeah.
Love that.
Well, let's talk about that because I feel like there was a progression of our friendship that has forever changed the trajectory of my life. Like it's not an exaggeration to say that friendship with you and Stephanie has changed who I am and how I show up in the world. No question. And
I feel the same.
So, yeah, I remember it started with you, and then I want you to kind of take it from what you remember of how we kind of took it to the next level from, taco soup and walks to what it's become. But I remember you coming over, it must have been another dinner or something, and you walked in the room with a book. And okay, we must have been friends for a little longer because I remember I had Conley at that point. So I had two babes under 3 or 4 because he was a baby. And you brought me a book, and it was Rebecca Lyons' Free Fall to Fly. And I remember you handing me this book and saying, you have to read this. And inside it was like, I don't read anymore. I don't have time. When? Like I have littles and I don't even know who I am. And I'm barely staying awake during the day, let alone sitting down by myself to read. But your insistence was irresistible. And there was a part of me that was like, okay, well, I don't want to let her down. She brought me a book and says I have to read it. And now I want to do the thing that she's expecting me to do. So I read it, and it changed everything. So can you talk about how our friendship morphed and grew through that book with Stephanie?
Gosh, yeah. I was trying to remember. I remember asking both of you, why don't we just read this book and meet together?
I think it was like you guys had connected. I wish she was here to clarify for us. We'll have to ask her after this.
I know, right?
It's too bad her job gets in the way and she couldn't join us in the middle of the day. But I remember you somehow connected with her, and I connected with her separately through a Bible study or something. And because I was connecting with you and I was connecting with her and you guys had connected a little bit, it felt risky, but you invited us both to read the book together. Or one of us did. I am assuming it was you because you always do the inviting. And the 3 of us decided that we would meet, just the 3 of us, and read this book together. Every couple of weeks, we'd get together and talk about it.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was risky because we didn't know each other very well. So talk about that. What happened after we started meeting?
Yeah, I think there's a part in the book. I haven't read it for so long. Now talking about it makes me want to go back and look through it. But there was a part where Rebecca was talking about just her friend group and how they always made a connection. And I think at one point in it, you're going to have to verify this, but I feel like they did like a life timeline in the book where they all went through it and they just spent time like going through their life timeline with each other and then praying over each other. And we read that and I'm like, you guys, we can do this. Like the three of us can do this. Let's finish this book. Let's find a place. And I think Steph's parents has a cabin. So we went there and we did it. I was thinking back that I feel like from that point on, I think our friendship really shifted. I feel like we shared things, like deep things that were probably, now we could look back and be like, that was probably trauma. And we were meeting each other with empathy. And so I feel like when you can meet trauma with empathy, that's when the real healing starts to happen.
Yeah.
So I think within our own individual stories and within our friendship, I think it planted a seed for like this healing and like openness and vulnerability that started. And yeah, like I haven't thought about that for such a long time. And this week it came back to me. I'm like, yeah, I think we didn't even know what we were doing necessarily. But yeah, I think it really changed all of us. I know it changed me.
Totally. Well, and I didn't remember the part of the timeline, but I remember us going on a retreat, like saying, okay, we're going to take a night even. Was it 2 nights? It was so short. And we built in time. And I remember you guys laughed at me because I was like, okay, here's our agenda. Like I made an itinerary for us to make sure we maximized every moment.
Yeah. Someone's got to do it.
You guys planned food, which is not my thing. And this is before we knew that these were things any of us were good at, right? It just sort of happened. But we had individual time where we worked on a timeline in solitude, each of us. And then we each took the hot seat and kind of shared and noticed some themes that kept coming up. And that was probably the first time outside of counseling. And I was just starting counseling for the first time around that point in my life. But it was the first time I had told my story, like my childhood story, talking about like these were things that happened that impacted me for better or worse, good, bad, or neutral, just to say out loud, this is my story. And to have you listen and pay attention to me with such care and compassion and interest, it was so vulnerable and healing at the same time.
Yeah.
But what I remember, even before the timeline, even before the retreat, is again, I'll have to find a link for Free Fall to Fly. I don't know where my copy is. It's the same. I want to reread it and just thank Rebecca Lyons at some point for how she planted the seed for all three of us. But I remember talking about her friendships and thinking, oh, I want that, which is what I hope people will hear here between us, right? Oh, I want that. I want to find that for myself. I want to create that for myself. Because I remember she talked about getting together regularly with a group of maybe other moms, or I don't know how she met her friends. They would meet on Tuesdays or, once a month or something, and they would go around and share vulnerably about what was going on. And that's what we started to do. We'd read the book and we talk about the book kind of, but more we would take turns and we would share what was beautiful and what was hard that week or that month. And then we would respond to one another with what we saw. And I had never had anyone speak such life to me. The way you and Stephanie saw me, you would say things like, Jillian, that's hard. You're doing a good job. This matters. Your tears make sense. You're not crazy. You're not too much. This is a lot. It is lonely to be a mom. No wonder. Like the way you saw me and validated my experience in itself was healing. But then the other thing that was so life-changing was you both started to say things and notice things about gifts that I had that I didn't know. No one had ever told me before. You started to say things like, Jillian, you're really good with your words. When you say things out loud to me, it's like you are putting words to things in my soul that I didn't know how to name. Or you would say things like, Jillian, when you write me cards or when you speak encouragement to me, your words have power. You need to write. You were the first one that told me you need to start a blog. And I was like, really? I should? What? But I would have never thought of that if you didn't call that out in me. Do you remember that dynamic between the three of us? And like, talk about the gifts, how we started to name the gifts that we saw in one another. And that was part of the book too, is I didn't know I was allowed to think about the things that made me come alive, the things I was good at, the things that I was dreaming about, the things that as a kid I used to do for hours. I didn't know I was allowed, especially as a mom and even as a Christian. I was like, oh, I don't want to be self-centered. I don't want to be self-absorbed and think about myself so much. But can you talk about that process and what it was like for you?
Yeah, I feel like we were all in this place of figuring out, gosh, who are we? Yes, we're wives, we're moms, but like, really, who are we? What do we want? And I feel like I know I struggled a lot with what is my purpose? Like, like
Mm.
who am I now? And I think all of us did at the same time. And I think we were, yeah, like you said, we were just able to call out the giftings of each other in such a very kind, thoughtful way, and also continue to recall those things as they came. So I think for you, like it started, you just asked really good questions, and you're able to take a conversation to like, what's the weather today, to like, gosh, don't you hate it when it rains and it makes you feel like what, like whatever, like you just take it to like a different level. That's not actually a real example. It's just an example.
That's helpful. It's helpful.
But yeah, the questions I think that you would ask would always make me feel like, gosh, how do you ask those kind of questions? Like, how can I ask those kind of questions? So it was encouraging to me in a way to see your giftings of how it changed and shaped me and like made me want to become more like you in the best of ways. And I feel like, with Steph is such I feel like she just brings joy where she goes and play, and she seems down for anything, but also really willing to help and care for people so deeply. So I learned from her, like, skip over those puddles. We went on a hike one time, one of our getaways, like around North Bend, and we were hiking, and Stephanie would have to run and jump over these puddles, literally every single puddle.
I forgot.
And I was like, oh, I love this new glimpse of Stephanie. Like, she loves to play. Like, she loves to play. And I was like, I need to learn to play more. I am not good at playing. I'm not good at asking questions. These are things that I'm like, gosh, I want that for myself, and not in the best of ways. Like, and I feel like we brought that out in each other. We brought out different parts of our own giftings and things that we called out in each other, and in sharing and being vulnerable in different areas of our life really allowed us to do that.
Well, and I think about you and how much I learned from you, like I've said, about pursuing people. And Corey and I, when we were new to town, would always talk about how hard it was to have to be the one to constantly invite others to hang out, invite people to dinner, and initiate, pursue, because we're all just waiting for someone to ask us to be in relationship. We're all just assuming everyone else is, hanging out and doing all the things. But the truth is that no one really wants to be the initiator. And you did that so beautifully, so consistently. But I also learned so much about hospitality from you and how intentional you always have been about creating welcoming, beautiful, safe, calm, peaceful spaces, and the little things that you would do to create that sense of warm welcome. And even if you weren't welcoming us into your home, if you were in my home, you would still bring this sense of peaceful, fully present care for the people around you. And so I've learned, it's funny, I didn't know that you liked the way I asked questions and wanted to do that. I didn't know that was something you were thinking. But at the same time, I was watching you and learning how to show up more fully and how to be more present with people and how to really see people. And yeah, it's just beautiful that in our friendship, there was never a comparison or competition. I don't really know how. Do you know?
Maybe, yeah, that's a great thought. Maybe because we were able to be vulnerable earlier on.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if that's a thing.
Probably. I think so. I think so, because we weren't trying to put on any facade or mask. We were just laying ourselves open to one another, saying, these are the things that I want. These are the things I'm afraid of. These are the things that I'm struggling with. So it's almost like that sense of comparison and competition was disarmed and like not a factor, because we weren't trying to impress each other. And we're also different too. I wonder if that's part of it, is like, you have such an artistic eye, such a unique style, and so many gifts that I don't have, but could never have, that it was almost like, oh, we're so different that I'm not going to try to be like Kandice, because I just want to admire her for who she is. And then I think about, like, fast forward, I've been doing a lot of reflecting lately on our journey and where God has taken us over a decade and a half, both together and separately, because like you said, 8 years ago you moved. And so we were only in the same town. Of our 15 years of friendship, we've only lived in the same town for 7 of those. And so because of our friendship over time, we decided to create this event together. Do you want to talk about IF?
Yeah. I think you're going to have to remind me of the details. Was it you who came to Stephanie and I and were like, hey, I want I want to start if, and I want you guys to help. Tried to build this team. And we would meet and just envision and try to use our giftings the best we could. And then the event came, and all three of us came away from that bruised. And
I would say broken.
That was
more than just bruised. Yeah.
Yeah. Like Stephanie broke her toe, right? Is that and I ended up having to get knee surgery soon after. And then we were moving soon after that as well.
Yeah. And that was like a mental health, right? For me, it was a breaking point for my mental health. It led to, just the most painful year after that I've shared about a bit, like to the point of almost walking away from my faith, devastating, paralyzing anxiety, devastating depression. Like, what in the world, God, if I'm working this hard to serve you and what comes of it is like my brain breaks, why would I continue doing things for you if this is how you treat your people? Like, that's lame. But it was really interesting that, like you said, we were using our gifts. We were coming together and saying, okay, like, we've had this friendship. We've started to call out what we see in each other, the beauty and the goodness and the giftedness and the passion and the purpose we see in one another. And we would have conversations about, like, I see this in you. And I remember your husband, Brian, was the first person who ever invited me to speak. I have no idea still why he asked me to speak at SALT, which was our college group at our church that he was in charge of at the time. I have no idea why he asked, but it lit something in me I didn't know was there. I didn't know how I would come alive on stages. And that was a wrestling point too, that I really had to work through a lot of insecurity and fear. But he was the first person to ask. And you were such a huge part of saying, yes, you're good at this. You're good at this. Keep going. Yes. Keep writing. Yes. Keep leading. Yes. Gathering these women together. This is good. We need to do this. And so we were doing our best to use our gifts to overflow into our community. And for those who are familiar with If Gathering, who aren't familiar with it, If Gathering is an international organization now that is basically a conference for women that they try to equip and empower women to lead in their spaces. So wherever we are, giving us resources and tools and content to help lead. So it was a live stream conference that we planned for our town and then streamed the content that they had put together. And it was such a big deal for me, but for all of us, I think, to have a space to use our gifts. We didn't know in the season of motherhood that we were in if there was room for us at the table, and we didn't know where we fit, and we didn't have much time, but we together figured out a way to each bring what we had. And it was so beautiful and so fun and so hard and so much work. And God showed up. He showed up in such beautiful ways. But like you said, it was a bruising and a breaking point for all three of us where, our bodies broke, our brains broke. And it was almost like our friendship kind of like scattered for a bit, and where I remember letting you down. I was in this paralyzing season of anxiety, and I think we were traveling too when you had surgery for your knee, and I didn't show up for you, and I hurt you for reasons that were legitimate to me at the time, but legitimate or not, I didn't show up in the way that you needed. And I remember you told me, and it was so painful to know that I'd let you down. But then I remember you guys moved, and there was every reason for our friendship not to continue. And like, we kind of had this sort of traumatic, like, all right, that was a big thing for us to do this event together. And now none of us are okay, and you're moving, and it could have easily been the end of our friendship. I'm curious if you have thoughts about why it wasn't. Like, how did we continue to be friends?
I think up until that point, we talked about, I felt like past things in the past that hurt us, or trying to figure out who we are, what we want to do, what are our giftings. But this was the first time we all experienced a different breaking and bruising at the same time, but in different ways. And so we are all responding in different ways. And I think we kind of lost, I don't think we were all so in our own hurt. I don't think we were able to have that conversation of, we knew what was going on with each other, but we didn't really know what was going on with each other. So I think because it's so true. When we deal with things that are really hard, we just kind of turn inward and we look at kind of what's happening only to us, and we kind of forget how to look outward. And I feel like, that was such a spiritual formation, I think, point in our life, where we did all turn inward, and we were all struggling, and we didn't voice what we needed. And what I love from looking back at that season is God was doing something in all of our lives, not only in our friendship, but I think in each and every single one of us. Like there was a breaking that needed to happen for us to continue to grow. And so God was calling us not only into a friendship, but to lead this ministry because he had more for us. Like it wasn't just about hosting this if gathering. God was like calling us into our giftings, into each other. And I love that we have that shared time to look back on. And I think what helped us move forward is just healing. I think individually we needed to heal before we could really see beyond to see each other again. I don't know.
So beautiful. Right. And I think you're right. It needed to happen. Like each of our individual stories, God was doing something new that we couldn't see at the time and really pissed me off, if I'm honest. Like I hated it.
Yeah.
I hated that it was so painful for each one of us. And if I could go back and do anything different, I wish that I could have come for you, showed up for you, because I know you would have wanted to do the same, but we didn't, like you said, have the skills or ability at that time to see outside of our own pain. And I love the compassion that you just brought, even as you're telling the story, the compassion you have for all of us when we were younger and the place that we were in. But I do actually remember some really healing conversations in the midst of our pain where, and it was like months in, and it was nowhere near as much as we wanted or needed, but there were little glimmers of like, hey, this is really hard. I don't know how to do this. Or like, I'm really struggling. Or I remember you would send, was it Voxer messages? Did we use Voxer or Marco Polo?
I don't think we did.
Was it texting?
It might have been Voxer, actually. I think it was Voxer.
But I remember you talking about how hard it was in your transition, and you continued to reach out to us in your struggle. You continued to be vulnerable, and your continued vulnerability, instead of staying inward, and I think because you were so desperate for connection, because you were new and you were lonely and it was overwhelming to start a church, your desperation led you to continue reaching out to us. I don't know that we would have stayed friends, Kandice, without your pursuit. And I actually hate admitting that. Because like I think about my history, I shared this a couple episodes ago, I think. I moved around a ton growing up and just lost contact with people. And so I think that's what I expect anytime a friend moves. It's like, okay, well, that was a really beautiful season and I blessed them and I loved it, but that's the end of our relationship. But because you continue to initiate, you continue to reach out, the three of us have maintained, obviously our friendship has changed. It looks different now, but maintain that sense of deep connection and love even over the last 8 years since you've been in a different town. So thank you. Thanks for fighting for us.
Gosh, I think our friendship was such a lifeline in that the first couple of years of church planning was really, really hard. And I think if I didn't have friends that weren't here, I don't know, like it would have been even harder, I think.
Yeah.
But having friends who knew me enough, who weren't here on the ground, was so helpful at that time. So I feel like that's changed my perspective on friends who we can't do life together in the way we used to. We're not in the same town, but there's something that's changed my perspective of, gosh, it does mean a lot to have those friends that see you that don't live in your same town. That's actually
that you have history with. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a lot of history. You've seen me over time. And you're not inundated maybe in the day-to-day the way other friends might be. And so you're able to have that kind of bigger picture, longer term perspective to tell me. Like I remember for so many years, you used to say to me, Jillian, gold is coming. We don't see it yet. It's being refined in us. Like there's something deeper happening that we can't see, but it's going to be, someday it's going to emerge as gold. It's going to be gold. Gold is coming. Over and over and over, you would say that. And I would look back, Kandice, and I see the gold. I see it.
Yeah, so good. There's so much gold. There's much gold now.
There are two things that just came to mind that I want to make sure to say. If people are interested in hearing more of your story, you and Brian's story, Brian actually wrote a book about it, which is so amazing, called Terrible Beauty. Yes. And you wrote a chapter in that book about your experience. So I want to make sure people, I'll include the link in the show notes if people want to read that. For anyone, I would say it's sure if you're a church planter, that's encouraging, but I would say it's for anyone in leadership, anyone who has influence over other people. Agree. Yeah. And then the other thing I was going to ask you is just about advice that you have for anyone as we're getting to the end here. anyone who's in a place where either they're moving or they're just looking for this type of friendship, like, do you have any advice for them about how they might be able to cultivate friendship that's more intentional and meaningful, like what we've experienced?
Gosh, I think from my own personal perspective of being someone who naturally can pursue people, if you have that gifting, to continue to use that gifting and to not give up. I think there are definitely times, maybe in our friendship and in other friendships, where I'm like, gosh, it's so exhausting to continue to reach out. But realizing like that's one of the ways that God has gifted me, and I can use that in this friendship. And it doesn't have to be like us all pursuing each other. It can just be the one pursuing. And if there's a mutual friendship, it can flourish. I think we have to remember that in friendships, we all have our different giftings we can bring to the table, and to not discount something because it feels hard or we're tired of doing it. I think that's where I would just encourage people to look at the gifts within the friends that you have in front of you.
Yeah. And even people that you wouldn't expect, like, honestly, we're so different. I wouldn't have expected us to be the type of friends that we are. Like, it wouldn't have necessarily occurred to me that, oh, we have so much in common, we should hang out. Like, you're just a really cool person who is very different than me. And like, I think about the fact that if you hadn't taken the risk and reached out, like, I wouldn't have one of the richest relationships in my life. But I'm also thinking about the excuses that people like me can make who, like, I'm not a naturally gifted pursuer. Like, it's really hard for me to reach out to people. Like, my brain gets full and the thing right in front of me is where I am, and I forget to initiate and connect with friends. I don't want that to be an excuse in my life, though. And so I want to encourage the people who maybe aren't as naturally gifted in that to reach out anyway and to initiate anyway, more than feels comfortable, knowing that the people who respond may be not the ones you expect to be the richest relationships. But when there is a mutual pursuit, the people who respond are the ones that are worth investing in. I feel like there have been relationships in my life where it's one-sided. And sure, every friendship has seasons where, like, I'm pursuing you or you're pursuing me more, and one of us has more to give than the other. And all of my friendships, it's never completely equal at the same time. But if there are friendships that are completely lopsided all of the time, that's, to me, a signal that maybe it's a friendship that doesn't need to be as high of a priority in that season. But the friendships where there's kind of a mutual pursuit in different seasons, but it's reciprocal, that feels like an indicator to me that that's a relationship. That's a relationship worth pursuing. I'm thinking about one of my closest friends here in town. Again, like, I kind of told her I don't really have room for more friendships in my life when she moved to town. And I was like, I really like you, but I just want you to know I'm bad at friendship and I don't have space. And she's like, all right.
Not true.
But she still kept reaching out. She is now one of my dearest, closest friends. So, Amanda, you know who you are. I just appreciate your perspective and all that you've taught me about initiating and pursuing people. Is there a permission slip that you want to give listeners before we close?
Yeah, I think with friendships, we just got to give ourselves grace. And I think we were wired for community. And so we can't discount that part, that God wired us for community, and we need each other. We need people to be vulnerable with. We need people to call out the giftings in us. We need those people in our life. So start with prayer and pursuing, and give yourself grace.
I love that. Prayer, pursuing, and grace, the ingredients for real friendship. So good. Kandice, I love you. Thanks for being here with me.
Love you too, friend.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Permission Slips. I hope this conversation will help you imagine how you might pursue deeper, more intentional friendships in your own life. And if you are looking for a space to dream about a purpose larger than yourself, if you want a space to explore your God-given gifts, passions, and dreams, I am experimenting with a new coaching group that will be offered online called Made for More. If that's something you want to learn more about, the link will be in my show notes, and we can talk about what it would look like for you to be a part of a small community of women who know that they're made for more. Remember, your life matters, and so do the friendships that help you discover your purpose more than you know.